Can I
Yeah,
ask
no,
a quick
please.
question? I'm
Sorry.
so just in awe that I'm on the screen, right now with
You
Chelsea,
and
and
me both, man. You and me
I,
both.
I'm just I work very closely with some of the Wall Street whistleblowers, working on what we call the new untouchables, which is describing all the elite control fraud that goes on in the housing crisis, you name it,
Yeah.
and watching them lose their ability to earn a living in their careers, watching them blacklisted, watching people literally stalked and chased down, and
Right.
just hearing their stories, I can only imagine what you went through. And I just want to say, as just another American citizen, how grateful I am for what you did. And I know how hard it is, not from a personal perspective, but being close and talking with these individuals, what a level of commitment to truth you have to have, and that willingness to literally fall on the sword when there's no one that's going to take your back. I just want to really give you a genuine round of applause for that. It takes so much, and I really want to thank you. Big time.
I just want to push back a little bit, because I do think I mean, people did support me, and people did, show up, and people, like, I was able to put up a good legal defense. I was able to, like, people showed up. They wrote, and, like, I can't tell you how I think it was, I think the final official count by the U.S. government was 370,000 letters or cards sent to me while I was in prison.
That's amazing.
Including ones that, I didn't get to keep, or that didn't make it to me. So I do think people, I mean, I think people did show up, and I did, and I had the immense privilege of having, having gone through the ringer of, like, the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex and the prison system in particular, with an enormous amount of support. And whenever I was, for me, like, the more immediate thing for me is, like, my experience in prison is what's really shaped my sort of, I mean, my politics are more shaped by my experience in prison, I think, than anything else now. And in the aftermath, it's kind of, I like had a very, I had a very different view of the world, like, before going to the military, and then I shifted again after going to prison. And, it's just like a poignant reminder that, like, there's like 2 million people in the prison system, and they're often forgotten about, and they're often voiceless. I was not one of them, but I saw all of that firsthand, and so I just want to, just
we have Tim, Bo, anytime you guys want to hop in.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a for-profit prison industrial complex in the United States, and it's a very, very profitable
it's
business.
it's our slave program. But I wanted to ask you, Chelsea, like, if you would talk about, like, being somebody who's transgender and being incarcerated. It's hard enough for people that are cisgender people that are being incarcerated, but I know there are so many extra things that you have to deal with. And not just for trans people, but really people with health, any kind of thing that requires something that you wouldn't just get standard issue, is a problem. And so if it's okay, like, would you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Oh yeah, sure. So I came out as trans publicly in 2013. I had figured out by like late 2009. Like, personally, I was like, okay, like, this is a thing I got to deal with. And then by the time I went to prison, I was, like, unable to access resources. I mean, even my own lawyers at the time, and the, like, psychotherapists and psychiatrists and stuff, really didn't know, like, what to say to me, because they're like, you're in prison, like, you don't have you just don't have access to medical. You don't have access to the things that you need to do to transition. Like, it's not unavailable to you. I later learned, actually learning, kind of how previous trans people had fought in the prison system for access to care, in the federal system and in the various state prisons, for things that, no, in fact, there are rights there, medical, medical access to care is extremely important. And so I finally, I was able to reach out to the ACLU, and they represented me, and it was a long, just arduous process of trying to gain access, to basic healthcare, like things like hormones, things like, I mean, the name change alone was like a contentious thing because I had to like do it, and I couldn't show up in person to like, because like Kansas requires you to show up in person. So I had to like get a waiver from a judge to like just get a name change order done and things like that. So like just going through the like the basics of every process of like transition. On top of that, having to go through the military and the prison system. The military was a lot more accommodating than the federal prison system in the sense of like, oh, there are actual procedures and stuff for like name changes and things like that. So, but the initial response was like, no, we won't do this. But then, like it was just this like regulatory fight and whatever. And just feeling like I just felt completely left out of the process sometimes, like, because it's like it's like a very intimate and personal thing that I didn't really want to have out there, this just very personal, and like having like every single issue being brought up before a judge or before a court, and then being in a media article or being in a magazine or being talked about on the news. It just like being like sort of like a public figure and sort of like dressed down constantly, is really wore me down, especially since, I was kind of left out of that process. Like, and I was just happy. I was just happy as soon as by 2015, I was just happy to like get access. And even then it was like the like being able to grow out my hair became like a new issue. And then eventually
they wouldn't let you grow your hair, right? Like they wouldn't let you grow your hair out.
Yeah, and we never had that issue dealt with. So, it's still an open-ended issue.
I don't understand what their problem is with the hair.
Make up any reason. That's all that it really comes down to.
Authoritarianism, just
control.
Wanting control.
Well, administrative violence is the concept that I became familiarized with as I was going through that process, which is like being able to do harmful things, but having this rubric of administrative policy and regulations, like, oh, well, the rules say that we can't provide this to you, therefore we're going to follow the rules, even though that's not like they write the rules, they can just change them,
right? Or they don't follow them with everything, they just follow them when it's or just pretending like like you request for an exception to policy, which I did. I filed like pretty simple piece of paper, like an exception to policy, and they're like, well, we can't do an exception to policy because policy, and it's just like
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.